Hey, you guys, welcome back to episode 2. This is Tyler.
Hey, and this is Josh.
We just wanted to thank you guys for listening to our first couple episodes. We have the pilot out now and episode 1. And honestly, we never expected this kind of support, so thanks for you guys for helping this thing grow. And remember, if you guys have any suggestions or comments, just let us know.
It's been crazy. People like it.
I showed up to work the other day and everyone was like, "When's the next episode?" giving us feedback. It was very nice to hear. I was surprised.
I know. We're making use out of the studio we're renting.
We're up to 5Gs, but we'll figure it out. So today we're just going to talk about some positives, negatives of social media. It's very important, and I think there are a lot of positives, and there are a lot of negatives about social media. And we'll touch on those and just see kind of the problems and solutions they give us in everyday life.
You like social media?
I have pretty much every social media thing you could have.
I think you're pretty famous. You're an influencer, aren't you?
No, not even close. I don't know if I would want to be because I don't know if that many people should be following what I'm doing.
You post shirtless photos of you at the beach.
Those high school days, they don't want to see that now, dad bod.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we have social media pages. So, I have an Instagram account, a Facebook account. I mean, I basically have used most forms of social media. Am I an active user? No, and that's the whole topic we'll touch on as to the amount of usage. And I think you basically are very similar in that regard.
All right, so Josh, what do you think are positives of social media?
I mean, basically, it's nice to have that connection. It's a lot easier to see what's going on with your family. It's a lot easier to reach out to friends and family. It's. I'm honestly struggling to discuss positives, which is funny now that we're here because I tend to see more of the negative aspects, and I find it generally more a net negative than positive.
I think with social media, one positive would be it gives us access to see everything that happens over the world now. We can even see it with some of the racial issues this country faces, things with cops, etc. We were never able to see these things that were happening before as we are now. These things have always existed. We've just never really been, it's never really been brought to light because of the lack of, cell phone, video camera, social media, and people posting too. There's always someone watching you at this point, which that basically is a negative in itself too.
It's a lot easier for movements and ideas and things to disseminate via social media. Like you said, recent news, I mean, you have Black Lives Matter, things like that. A lot of that can gain momentum and a voice via social media, and it's unprecedented. I mean, no other generation has had to deal with something like this to this extent, where everyone is always connected and actions by individuals can reverberate throughout communities. So
I think it's also hard on parents too. I was probably one of the last generation to grow up. I really didn't get a smartphone until I think 8th grade, 9th grade, like high school time. So I was already, on my way to being grown and whatever. But now some of these kids have access to things online that I feel for the parents. On the flip side of that, though, they equip their kids with all this access too.
Right. It's exposing them and throwing them into this crazy connected world. So I agree. I mean, I didn't get a smartphone until was like 10th, 11th grade,
That's about what it was for me too.
and even then things were still relatively new. So it's definitely grown from that, but looking back, I was nowhere near as connected as kids are nowadays. So I mean, there's positive and negatives that comes with that.
The connectivity part of it, I do enjoy, especially with family friends, the older generation. I mean, we'll be blunt. They actually use Facebook well. It's a pretty easy interface. Stay in touch with family relatives, especially if they're out of town.
You can also paint a very specific picture of your life on these social media platforms. You can show an image of your life that may not be the actual case. You can display happiness, but actually be miserable. On the topic of dating and people, you have these false images that people project, and that in itself is a problem.
That's a big issue too. I feel social media has become, oh, look what I'm doing and you're not, in a
Right.
sense, to try to brag. Whether we know if that person is being truthful or not, it still does present like I'm better than you in a sense, or I'm doing these things. Why do I need to see someone's salad at a restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
Things like
Right.
that.
For example, I very recently, I mean, obviously before COVID, started traveling, but prior to that, I really never was able to travel. So when I would see on social media, like people going on these trips and things like that, envious might be the word. I definitely was cognizant that I was like, oh, I wish I could do that or such and such. You know, it's interesting when you reflect on that. It's like, wow, that was actually having a negative impact on me. That before, who really had to deal with that? Like in
True.
the past.
That puts into perspective on me too, because Sam and I, we travel a lot and we'll post pictures and stuff. That's usually the only time I post, but realizing it may have had a negative effect on someone, it makes you mindful of opportunities that some people may not have had and how it can come across as bragging.
And I don't even think you have to view it that way. I don't even think you could post and celebrate, what you do. If you go on a trip, that's fine. That's when you should be posting, like you said. It's just interesting when you analyze, like, and people probably don't talk about this so much, like, oh wow, yeah, I wish I could have gone on a trip like that. But that's there's so many things that come with having a social media account, so many stressors that you don't think about, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about how they were envious that someone else went on this trip and they weren't able to, and it goes all both ways. If I post a picture about a trip, I'm probably having that same effect on someone else. And as you said, you were talking about eating. A lot of people posting photos of clean eating and things like that, and it makes you like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating this cheeseburger or whatever the case may be. So many facets to what people post on there and the effect it carries into other people's personal life. So it's when you reflect on it, it's interesting.
What do you feel, or how do you feel about online bullying and how that's become a large issue?
Social media, I didn't grow up with. I reached the tail end when I was getting older, but I did grow up with online gaming. There was definitely a lot of online bullying. I mean, I was playing online games when I was like 6, exposed to that world. So I saw bits and pieces of it there, and it was usually self-contained. It didn't have a platform like Facebook or Twitter. I mean, MySpace was probably when that started to truly gain ground.
Some things
But
just get so personal too.
It is an issue. It is definitely a big issue. And you look at these teenagers or these people committing suicide over online bullying, and it's sad, and it's something that I wish didn't have to happen. And you were talking earlier about these parents allowing these kids access to these platforms. That is honestly a big issue. I don't know if I don't know how you combat this.
I think it's being mindful. I think parenting has a lot, plays a large role in it too. I think it's easy in today's world to just stick an iPad in front of your kid and
and it's not always the right answer.
And not have to do much and kind of leave them on the back burner while you're doing your thing, which whatever, that's fine at times, but also I think it's very important that you know what your kids are doing. Now, I obviously don't have kids of my own, so I don't want to sound like I'm teaching other parents or chastising them, but I was raised with my parents who I had blocks on pretty much everything until I got to high school. I wasn't exposed to some of the things kids now are exposed to. My mom was always mindful about what I was doing, and at the time you think they're just being controlling, whatever, but it's important because what we talked about earlier about a feeling of envy or jealousy or some people being depressed that they're not doing certain things, that can all contribute to some of these suicides that happen just already. Feeling put down and depressed that I can't do this or I don't have this or I'm not eating out here. When you really break it down, social media was meant to elevate people and create
celebrate
friendships. Yeah, and now over the years, it's become such a good tool to put people down and do exactly the opposite of what it was created to do, which is very interesting and frankly, it's upsetting.
Do you feel social media is embedded in our culture now?
At this point, yes. I feel like it would be very difficult to get rid of it. I don't think there is any getting rid of it.
I think now that it's here, you're right, there is no way to get rid of it. And that comes with its own connotation. It comes with self-control and it comes with self-limiting. Now, we have our monkey brains. We like the dopamine rush. We post our picture, it gets so many likes. It's hard. Look at obesity in America. Look at impulsiveness. A lot of people are they want that quick dopamine rush. They want the feel good of posting their photo on Facebook and getting all these likes and all this attention it's very hard to pull away from that. And it's interesting when you analyze it, you're like, wow, there is no coming back. I don't think there is. Without a shadow of a doubt, social media is embedded.
I agree. I think going forward, the creators of some of these platforms are going to have to do better at monitoring. And I say that on the bullying side of things. And also we've seen it on the trolling and fake accounts and things like that have happened. And that, to me, which I guess we can talk about because it's been recent and even as of this year, the biggest worry I have are the bots, trolls, fake accounts, because our democracy is so shaky right now, and it was like that, but now social media has actually accelerated that by creating such a divisive tool. And the fact that we have elections and we don't know who's trying to interfere, who's trying to influence, and they're all foreign powers, so it's not even coming from within this country. Obviously, there are advertisements, which on either side, there are false ads, which should be taken down right away. I feel like the free speech argument, which we'll touch on another episode down the road, but the free speech card gets played a lot regarding false things. And I feel like in certain scenarios, you can't hide behind that veil, because when you're making a decision on a congressperson, a senator, a president, I feel like playing false ads is wrong, and it does us in this country a disservice.
I'm going to make a statement. I think social media is a massive contributor to the current political climate. I think the divisiveness nature of the current political climate for what you're saying. I think the propagation of these fake accounts, this fake news, the actual fake news, has led to this inflammation of people and their political views. And it's become a very irritated wound to say anything political, because it carries with it just a fire, so to speak.
The issue, too, is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They want to have ads. That's fine. They want to post things that aren't true. That's fine. But why is it that if CNN, Fox News, NBC, any of those, if they post something false, there are consequences. The anchors get suspended. People get fired. They get ads pulled. Yet Facebook and things like that are not held to the same standard. So if Facebook is going to act as a news organization, which unfortunately a lot of people in this country get their news from Facebook, which is the worst possible place you should be getting your news. If they're going to be a news organization or take on that role, they should be dealt with accordingly when they produce false information, just as every other news organization is held to a higher standard. Why is Facebook held to such a low standard? And we know the creator of Facebook is not going to do anything about it, because at the end of the day, he's making a boatload of money.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%. And as you're saying, I feel when you get your news from the same place you're getting your dopamine points from, it's kind of almost like watching TV while eating. You're consuming your junk food and trying to stimulate your brain, and a lot of the stuff that you see on Facebook, you have to double check. And as I was talking earlier about self-control and self-regulation, you see a headline on Facebook, how apt are you to go and double check the source and verify that it's actually factual?
You hit share and hope for some likes.
Correct, 100%. Continue the dopamine points, continue the propagation of whatever you just shared, is hope it's true, and it leads to, as well, I like to consider social media bubbles. So the people that like your post, that like what you share, likely are alongside the same political views. So you're pushing into, okay, these people like what I shared, it's got support. You get divisive.
Creates more divisiveness.
Correct. Now you have your group of people that like what you share, and someone in your group might share something that you like, so you give them dopamine points. And it just leads to this vicious cycle of people sharing the same viewpoint, whatever it is, right or wrong, and that's all you hear, that's all you see on your feed. So it's just the same few viewpoints.
And that goes along with voting as well. You don't bother checking your topic or what you're sharing. If you're not going to do your due diligence on that, you're not going to research into who said that or anything like that. If you feel that person said, if someone from your party said something and you agreed with it, he may not have even said it, but you're more apt to vote for that person instead of researching their topics, their discussion, what they've actually done, and again, never hearing anything from the other side. And it just, to your point, creates a more divisive culture, which from past I mean, years ago, everybody, obviously, this country is mostly a two-party system. We've all had disagreements, but it's never been this bad where people can be handed a fact or told a fact, science, data backed up, and we're so divisive that even though you have science right in your hand or facts right in your hand, it's not true. It's fake. So that is an issue that social media has really accelerated. And it really has become the last probably, I mean, 2010, 2012, around that things got bad, it started to get bad. And then as they've gotten bad, they've accelerated very quickly.
I want people to look at like the anti-vax movement and the flat Earth movement, which we've oddly enough had a resurgence of, and think about what I was just saying with the bubbles. All it takes is just a small community of the same people with the same viewpoint, and you might pick up one or two or three or more followers, and then you have a movement. You have a movement of a false. I mean, I think we can all agree that Earth is not flat. Sorry to isolate those viewers.
Well, that's science and fact. I'm fine with everybody listening, and I do like to talk about either side, but when it comes to things like that, I can't find any middle ground with you. I'm sorry.
But the point I'm making more is just you have these movements that kind of were just fringe. I mean, they were a lot more. I mean, you could attribute to me seeing more of it just because of social media and how we were saying earlier. You have your finger on the pulse of the world now. But I do think, and from what I've seen, these movements have not taken off, but they've definitely grown as a result.
The bubble's gotten a little bigger.
Yeah, exactly. So, Tyler, what do you do to try and limit your social media usage? Do you do anything?
I used to be in high school. We talked about that dopamine rush when I first got my phone, got on these social media sites. It's nice posting things people like, comment, especially in high school. It's such a difficult time in anyone's life. A lot of new things going on. So I definitely was in that. I wouldn't say addicted, but I definitely was on a lot, talking to a lot of people, posting stuff a lot. As I've grown and came into my own and really found out what I like and established friendships and hang out with certain people, I don't go on quite as much. If I do, I don't really post much. Really, the most I've done with the social media has been promote this show, but I don't have a certain... I'm usually preoccupied with either with work or just doing things outside. I'm a more physical guy, so I've kind of done what I like as opposed to sit on social media all day.
So, idle time at work, let's say you're caught up and your brain is thirsting for something to do. Do you find yourself going to these social media platforms and just mindlessly scrolling, consuming? Honestly. Is it your first inclination?
Yeah, probably to grab my phone, see what's going on, scroll 5 minutes, put it down, do something else. I do. It's probably the first thing I go to, but I don't stay on for long.
Correct. I do it too. And I don't think a lot of people, when they look at that, I don't think they realize it. They don't. If you're just sitting around, idle time, wherever it may be, and you go and grab your phone, just observe. If your first inclination is to click on the big Facebook button or to click on the Instagram, and then you have those shiny bubbles at the top for people's stories. Let me just check out what people are doing, and you just notice the somewhat mindless consumption. And honestly, this is not a condemnation of that. It's just an analysis of it. We may not be realizing how much we do it.
And we've noticed it. We're not talking about anything we haven't noticed or done. Like I said, I was big into social media. So not like I don't have an experience with it. I wanted
Right.
to ask one thing because we were talking about it the other day, and I had no idea what it was. Shows you how much I'm on online. But do you want to explain to our listeners what doxing is?
Oh, the where you get slammed with the internet's wrath. They tear you apart. We're seeing a lot of that lately,
Yeah, so
especially.
I saw it. I had no idea what it was, and Josh told me, yeah, that's when you expose someone on social media and not expose something they said. Like you actually post things like where they live, their name, number, address, and that's horrible.
I am trying to remember the actor's name. I think she was a Nickelodeon actor who recently had this teenage boy who posted some racist comments on Twitter or something like that, and she effectively doxed him. She was like, she told her following to go to this person's page, find out what you can about them, email his principal, things like that. And I don't know the end result. I know the parents got fired, and I think he may have been expelled.
Do you think that's right?
Oh, absolutely not. You're asking me if I think crowd justice is right. If I think a group of online clowns should be the judges for this teenage boy's racist comments. I don't think I think the boy should be allowed to say whatever he wants. That's fundamentally free speech. I don't think the internet is the one to persecute him. And
Yeah, if
you
you
know,
disagree with someone's statements, don't buy or listen to their product as opposed to expose them, which also can lead to violence, unjustified violence, and harm to that person, which people are wrong and they make mistakes, but I never wish anyone ill will like that. Just maybe teach them so they can learn and grow from that experience.
and I want people to think about that. Let's say there were this boy, this kid, he has all these people doxing him, kind of essentially blowing up his page and stuff like that. Imagine his social status now, being known as the racist kid who blew up on the internet, got his parents fired, got expelled. I mean, that's a big blow to a teenage boy, and that leads us back to the online bullying. I mean, that could lead to depression, suicide, things like that. I mean, I know if I was 13, I wasn't making racist comments, but if something like that had happened to me, it seemed like the worst thing in the world, and it probably is the worst thing in the world to him. So that's another consequence we have to deal with as a result of this connected environment.
I think social media can be a very good thing. I think it's up to the people using it to make it what it can be instead, which is it's very easy to be negative. It's a lot easier to be negative than it is to be positive. That's the truth, and that's just from living. You ever get in those moods where it just seems, you're pissed off at the world? It's a lot easier sometimes to feel that way than be cheery 24/7, very happy. So I think what we see is, which some of these people may find it harmless, the disagreements on Facebook or just comments, things like that, it may be harmless, but you don't know how you're affecting the other person behind that screen. Some people take things a different way. Like I said, though, things can get very personal and very hurtful. I have experience with that too. People have said things about me, which, whatever, if people feel that way, that's their opinion, but don't discount how you make other people feel.
Right, exactly. There's another person on the side of your phone or your computer that is going to feel something from what you tell them. So, that's like I said, I grew up in internet gaming, and people said crazy things. They don't care who they're talking with.
Are you worried about this election year with hacking and
I mean,
fake accounts?
it's going to happen. It's going to happen every election year from now on until the end of time.
Well, the issue is no one in any state or any branch of government seems to really be doing anything about it. Mm-hmm. So I do worry going forward, if we don't take a stance on it now, it's just going to become the norm, or we're just not going to care what some of these other countries do, like the ones who have been accused, Russia, China, they're dictatorships. So I would hate to see us.
Well, I want to ask you, the news station is built off of reliability, but realistically they could go and say whatever they want. You know, reliability and credibility may be thrown out the window, but they can still say whatever they want. How do you feel about that on a social media platform that, I mean, like we were talking about Facebook being a news source for many individuals. Realistically, individuals could go on there and say whatever they want. How do you regulate that? Do you regulate that?
It's hard. It's hard, but I see it. You don't have a Twitter. I do, and to me, that's probably one of the worst for the trolling and the fake accounts. That and the spreading of misinformation. Facebook's bad, but Twitter's very bad because you get sound bites. You get a lot of sound bites.
Correct.
And with Twitter, they have started implementing, if someone tweets something, the president tweeted 2 things that were false, and Twitter did fact check him on it. Underneath it said, this tweet is false, and it sent a link to a place to get that information. Frankly, I feel like every political figure elected should have like some sort of fact checker on their account, because I feel these are the ones we go to for what's happening in our society. And like you said, either side can say whatever they want and it be completely false, which I think Sam told me Facebook did the same thing. They did the fact check section.
Facebook will on occasion. I haven't seen them.
It's not consistent. That's the problem. And I'd like to see consistency with it. It's good to do, but if you're going to do it, show some consistency.
So is that the extent of the regulation you'd like to see, is just ensuring that it's documented as a false tweet?
Unfortunately, I don't know what else we could do. People hide under the veil of free speech. So do we, fine people? I certainly think jailing them is too, that's a little extreme. But do you fine people for false statements? Then you run into the issue of, well, if I feel this person had a false statement or it wasn't 100% worded accurately, then we're getting into very deep territory. I feel the best way would be to educate people. So if someone says something false, say a government official says something false, it's wrong, it's false, but instead of punishing them, I guess it's our job to probably spread the word of the truth and make sure these people have an outlet to find the truth. Because unfortunately, everything in this country is so fragile. All our constitutional rights are so fragile, and too much on one side, things could break. And I think when you start to punish, whether it be fine, it gets into extremes. And like I said, people have different views of seeing this. You can see the same sentence as me, but take it a completely different way. So sometimes that can happen, and we get completely different truths from that one statement. So that's a very, very tough thing to handle, and it is something that's going to have to be accounted for going forward, because this is only going to get worse.
I think no matter what, it all comes back to having to not mindlessly consume your news and your media. Because, as you're saying, if I could go on and say whatever I want on Twitter, whether it be false, true, whatever the case may be, and maybe I'll get a false flag or whatever whatever form they want to use. But if I ever got punished, or, I mean, of course moderation exists, things like that, but if I ever got punished for simply stating something like that, then we start to look at threats to freedom of speech. And that's a whole nother topic. Someone may be on there and spreading the most vitriol, the worst hate you've ever seen. But if we hold freedom of speech as a fundamental belief, how do you regulate someone like that? You can't. So you have to really be cognizant of what you're reading and the viewpoints and things like that. Otherwise, you're going to wind up in these traps.
I think this was a good discussion today.
Yeah, definitely.
This was very insightful. I got a few points I didn't think about. You saw Hamilton, right?
Yes.
Amazing, right? Wasn't that an absolute amazing masterpiece?
It was great.
I think I highly recommend everybody on here. It is worth... I think what Josh did, he bought Disney just for the month, just so he could watch Hamilton. So I think that's the only thing it's on, is Disney Plus.
Yes.
So I have the Disney subscription, but if I didn't, I would have gotten it just for this. It was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, definitely well worth it. In fact, they're sponsoring this building.
Disney Plus or Hamilton?
Both.
Oh, God, we would be in a much nicer building than this one. All right, guys. If you want to, again, follow us. We are The Nurse Bros on YouTube. On Facebook, we are facebook.com/The Nurse Bros. We were put up on Spotify.
Yeah, you can find us on Spotify.
Also, Google Podcasts. It's all The Nurse Bros. I think we're generally up on every site you can get your podcast from.
Anywhere you like to listen, basically. It's very interesting when I pull up Spotify and I see our podcast there. I'm like, wow.
It is. That's that dopamine rush you were talking about.
I'm next to Hamilton. Which do I pick?
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you listening. We hope you guys subscribe, keep sharing us, spreading the word. We just like to have friendly discussion, and hopefully we'd like to bring more people into this. So, keep sharing, keep the word up. We appreciate all the early support from you guys. And this is Tyler signing off.
Thanks. This is Josh signing off as well. Gonna go get some dopamine points.
And we will talk with you guys next week, all right? Have a good one.
Bye.